Well, hello, everyone. It's good to have this opportunity to share with you information about the health effects of soy foods, and specifically about the effects of soy on reducing wrinkles. So what is skin wrinkling? Well, it's a natural phenomenon due to a variety of degenerative, environmental, genetic, and hormonal influences. And one of those hormonal influences is sun exposure. That causes photoaging, which is the premature aging of the skin caused by repeated exposure to ultraviolet light. And that's why you so commonly see people using umbrellas when it's sunny out and also putting on sunscreen. Now, of course, there are a variety of skin creams available that are designed to improve the condition of the skin and in some cases to prevent and or alleviate wrinkles. The skincare market is absolutely huge. It's worth about $145 billion. The skincare accounts for about 40% of the global cosmetic market. And interestingly, the Asia Pacific region accounts for 43% of the world cosmetic market. Now, what's often not recognized is that when topically applied, soybean extracts provide many dermatological and cosmeceutical benefits. Topical application of soy is useful for skin lightening, preventing UV damage, improving the elasticity of the skin, which is very important, and also for preventing hair growth. There are a variety of soybean extracts and ingredients that are used in skin creams, including soy milk as shown here, and also tofu. All of these slides show skin creams that include one or more soy ingredients. And you can see just how many there are, and I could have made many slides, more slides like this. But what I want to talk about is the beauty from within concept. That's the beauty from the inside out. So the question is, can we skip the soy creams and just eat soy foods? So why might soy foods improve skin health? Well, they might improve skin health, and I think they in fact do improve skin health because soy foods are uniquely rich sources of isoflavones. And isoflavones are classified as phytoestrogens or plant estrogens. And that's important because we know for certain that estrogen administration delays or prevents skin aging. So let's take a little bit of time to understand some of the health effects about isoflavones. As I indicated, soybeans and soy foods are uniquely rich sources of these very interesting compounds. And you can see this point illustrated on this slide in that the average isoflavone intake among Japanese, especially those consuming a traditional diet, is about 40 milligrams per day, whereas in the US and Europe, it's fewer than 3 milligrams per day. There are about 25 milligrams of isoflavones in one serving of a traditional soy food, and there are about 3 to 4 milligrams of isoflavones per gram of protein. So if you consume a cup of soy milk that contains 7 grams of protein, you're going to get about 25 milligrams of isoflavones. Korean isoflavone intake is a little bit lower than in Japan. You can see here from this national survey, it's about 24 milligrams per day. The main sources of isoflavones, not surprisingly, are soybeans, tofu, bean sprout, soy milk, and then fermented soy products. Isoflavones have been the subject of a tremendous amount of research, as evidenced by the number of scientific papers published on isoflavones each year. There are about 1,000 papers published annually on isoflavones, and you can also see between 1990 and 2000, the number of isoflavone publications increased about 9-fold. The main 2 isoflavones in soybeans are genistein and daidzein, and you can see in the right-hand part of this slide that isoflavones have a similar chemical structure to estrogen, the female reproductive hormone. So for that reason, isoflavones are able to bind to estrogen receptors and to exert estrogen-like effects under certain experimental conditions. Consequently, they are commonly classified as phytoestrogens, as I've already mentioned. However, I want to emphasize that although they are classified as phytoestrogens, they are different from the hormone estrogen. Sometimes they have effects opposite to those of estrogen, and sometimes they're not going to have any effects in tissues that are affected by the hormone estrogen. So isoflavones and estrogen share some properties in common, but they are also very different. And to understand at the molecular level why isoflavones and estrogen are different, you need to recognize that there are two estrogen receptors, estrogen receptor alpha, which was discovered in 1958, and estrogen receptor beta, which was discovered in 1996. When activated, these receptors can have different and sometimes opposite physiological effects. And that's important to know because isoflavones preferentially bind to and activate estrogen receptor beta in comparison with estrogen receptor alpha. Now, estrogen binds to and activates both of these receptors equally. Isoflavones prefer estrogen receptor beta. And that's important because estrogen receptor beta and not estrogen receptor alpha is the main mediator of estrogen action in human skin. And that's why it's been proposed that estrogen receptor beta is a novel therapeutic target for the prevention and treatment of photoaging. There's actually been quite a bit of research that has examined the effects of isoflavones on the condition of the skin. In total, 8 studies have evaluated skin health. All 8 studies have shown efficacy. 5 of those studies focused on wrinkles. 1 of those focused on collagen synthesis, which I'll talk about a little bit later. 1 showed an increase in hydration, and the other 1 showed an increase in the general condition of the skin. Now, unfortunately, all of these studies have some design limitations, so it's not possible to draw definitive conclusions at this time. But I'm going to focus on 3 of these studies. It concluded this novel dietary supplement provides improved condition, structure, and firmness of the skin in postmenopausal women. The supplement included vitamin C and E, antioxidants, some minerals, some herbs, and then you can see 35 milligrams of isoflavones. And the supplement was very effective, as you can see on this slide. And here we're looking at the decrease in wrinkles around the corners of the mouth. And you can see a significant decrease shown in the green line in response to the supplement versus the placebo. You see a similar benefit when looking at the wrinkles around the corner of the eye, which are often referred to as crow's feet wrinkles. But as I mentioned, there were many biologically active components in this supplement. So from this particular design, we're not actually able to determine the exact contribution of isoflavones to the observed benefits. Now, this next study is a little bit more informative. This study concluded daily intake of fermented soy milk as well as traditional soy milk, unfermented soy milk, improved skin condition via increased levels of isoflavone absorption. So this was an 8-week study, 57 postmenopausal women. One group consumed 200 milliliters per day of fermented soy milk. The other group consumed 200 milliliters per day of unfermented soy milk. The soy milks provided about 40 milligrams of isoflavones. The participants, the women, filled out a facial skin questionnaire, and biopsies were also taken of the skin. And here we see that, not surprisingly, isoflavone excretion increased dramatically in response to the consumption of soy milk. When the soy milk was discontinued, the levels returned to their baseline values. So the isoflavones were well absorbed. And here are the results of the skin questionnaire. I'm not going to go through all these numbers, but the higher the score, the better the condition of the skin. And I'll just focus on overall satisfaction. You can see in response to soy milk, it went from 2.7 to 3.4. And then after discontinuing soy milk, it decreased to 3.1. For the fermented soy milk, it went from 2.4 to 3.3. Again, a significant increase, and then decreased to 2.8 when soy milk was no longer being consumed. And those were the results of a subjective determination. So I think it's important to also show the objective response. And this was based on biopsies taken of the skin. Here we see the score. The higher the score, the better. Here we see the score at baseline or week 0 for soy milk and fermented soy milk. And now we see that after 8 weeks of consuming the soy milk, there was a statistically significant improvement in skin score. So both the subjective and objective determination showed the soy milk was efficacious. Final study found a combination of isoflavones and omega-3 fatty acids, lycopene, vitamin C, and E, when consumed orally for 14 weeks, can significantly reduce the depth of facial wrinkles. 159 postmenopausal women, so very large study, 14-week intervention. And here we see the primary outcome was the crow's feet wrinkle depth, the wrinkles around the corner of the eye. There was a statistically significant decrease in wrinkles. The average decrease was about 10%, and that's over just a 14-week period. The greater the wrinkles, the greater was the benefit. And wrinkles were decreased because there was an increase in collagen synthesis. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. It's found in the bones, muscle, skin, and tendons. And importantly, it forms a scaffold to provide strength and structure to the skin. Now, unfortunately, we know that as we age, the amount of collagen in our skin decreases. And you can see the results for those who are 18 to 29 years of age, about 15 nanograms per millimeter cubed, versus only about 5 nanograms for those who are over the age of 80. Now, once again, we have this situation where isoflavones weren't the only ingredient involved in this particular supplement. We see it also contained lycopene, vitamin C, vitamin E, and omega-3 fatty acids. So how do we know isoflavones contributed to the benefit? Well, we know this because these non-isoflavone ingredients do not affect collagen synthesis, whereas we know that isoflavones do affect collagen synthesis. And in fact, isoflavones were added to the preparation specifically because of their effect on collagen. Here's a paper from 2017. Treatment with topical estrogen is superior to genistein. Genistein is the main isoflavone in soybeans, but both have positive impacts on facial skin collagen. And here we see the results. You have the results at the baseline or when the participants were enrolled. And then you see the increase after 24 weeks, an increase both in response to estrogen and to isoflavones, and that's for type 1 collagen. And then you also see a similar situation for type 3 collagen. So genistein increased collagen synthesis, wasn't quite as effective as estrogen, but it was still very effective. And by the way, one of the authors associated with this study actually noted at a scientific meeting that the benefits of this supplement were lost when isoflavones were removed from the preparation. Now, because of all this encouraging, very intriguing data, the United Soybean Board, in conjunction with the Soy Nutrition Institute, recently funded a 2-year study at a cost of $400,000 evaluating the effects of soy on skin health. More specifically, the researchers will be looking at 25 grams per day of soy protein, providing 50 milligrams of isoflavones, with 25 grams per day of casein. It's a 24-week study. The main outcomes are wrinkle depth, collagen, and pigmentation. I'm very excited about this study. So I would say for intake recommendations, about 2 servings per day. That's about 50 milligrams of isoflavones or about 15 grams of soy protein, with an upper limit of about 4 servings per day. Now, there are additional benefits of isoflavones, and I'll just spend a few minutes addressing those. Here we have a statistical analysis published in 2012. Soy isoflavone supplements are significantly more effective than placebo in reducing the frequency and severity of hot flashes. More recently, here we have a statistical analysis published last year. Isoflavone interventions hold great promise in the prevention and treatment of menopausal-related osteoporosis. So both reduces hot flashes, promotes bone health, and of course reduces wrinkles. Now, some concerns have been raised about isoflavones in soy foods, but I can assure you the science supports the safety of soy foods. One of the major controversies about soy is its relationship or impact on the prognosis of breast cancer survivors. I can tell you, though, that the scientific community has actually done a complete turnabout since the 1990s, when animal studies suggested that soy could worsen the prognosis of breast cancer patients, to the situation today where the human research suggests that soy may actually benefit women with breast cancer. And why do I say that? Well, I say that because of the statistical analysis published in 2013 involving 5 studies, 3 from China, 2 from the US. Over 11,000 women with breast cancer were enrolled in these studies. They were followed from 4 to 7 years. During that time, almost 1,000 women died of breast cancer, and nearly 1,500 women had a recurrence of their disease. The investigators found that consuming soy after a diagnosis of breast cancer reduces risk of recurrence by 16% and death from breast cancer by 26%. And both findings were statistically significant. I also want to mention that the American Institute for Cancer Research, the American Cancer Society, the Canadian Cancer Society, and the World Cancer Research Fund International have all concluded soy is safe for breast cancer patients. And the European Food Safety Authority and the German Research Foundation concluded that isoflavones do not adversely affect breast tissue. So the evidence is quite clear. Soy is not only not harmful to breast cancer patients, but may actually benefit them. Now, another concern that has arisen is whether soy affects puberty onset. And one of the reasons this concern has been raised is because we know from population-based studies worldwide that there's a secular trend towards earlier puberty development. And this is potentially relevant to soy because it's also hypothesized that earlier pubertal development may be due to exposure to hormonally active chemicals in the environment. And because isoflavones are classified as plant estrogens and may have some hormone-like effects in certain conditions, the concern has been raised that soy could advance the age of puberty in girls and boys. And certainly we know that puberty is increasing earlier in life in girls, and we know this when you look at the change in age of menses onset over many decades. And you can see, for example, in Korea between 1920 and 1985, that the age of menses onset, that is when girls first begin menstruating, went from 16.9 years to 13.8 years. However, I want to point out that this change is occurring in countries that consume soy as well as countries that don't consume any soy. It's occurring all over the world. So let's look at a study that actually examined the relationship between soy intake and age of menses onset. They found that soy intake is not associated with age of menses onset in a population of girls who have a wide range of and relatively higher soy intake than the general U.S. population. These girls were Seventh-day Adventists. That's a religious denomination. About 40% of the Adventists practiced a vegetarian diet, so their soy intake is quite high. There were 327 girls in the study. The average age range was 12 to 18. And then you can see on the left a wide range of soy food intake frequency. At the low end, you had no more than 1 serving per week. At the high end, you had more than 3 servings per day. And what do we see? We absolutely see no relationship between the amount of soy consumed and the age at which girls began menses. Now, there's less evidence that puberty is occurring earlier in life in boys, but here's a Swedish study from 2019 that provided evidence of a secular trend for earlier pubertal timing in boys that's partially explained by an increased body mass index, but other factors also contribute. What they found was that the peak height velocity was occurring earlier in life. Now, here is a study, again, involving Seventh-day Adventists that looked at the relationship between soy intake and age of puberty in boys. And they found age of puberty in this male population widely exposed to soy is within the reported range for boys' pubertal age. Now, they did find that modern high soy consumers tend to have puberty a little bit earlier than low soy consumers. But what's interesting about this study is even for the high soy consumers, the age of puberty was actually later than it is for the general U.S. population. And so I'm not at all concerned about that study. I think both of these studies indicate that soy is not affecting puberty onset. I'll also point out that in 2017, the Food and Drug Administration in the United States evaluated the safety of soy protein. They not only looked at the scientific evidence, but reviewed the comments of more than 1,300 individuals. Many of those expressed concern about the safety of soy. The FDA concluded the use of soy protein at the levels necessary to justify a health claim has been demonstrated to our satisfaction to be safe. Those levels are 25 grams of soy protein per day. That's a very large amount of soy to consume. FDA says soy is safe. And then finally, I'll just draw your attention to this review paper published in Critical Reviews in Food Science and Nutrition. It's published earlier this year, 10 authors, huge paper, 30,000 words, looked at all of the concerns about soy and isoflavones, and you can see those listed here. The authors concluded there were no proven adverse effects. So just to emphasize, and I think just reiterate, the science supports not only the benefits of soy, but the safety of soy. And I want to thank you very much for your attention.